Welcome to HeartMind-ify. Before we start the show, just a reminder to share, rate, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And please give us a 5-star rating. It helps us beat the big tech algorithms.
I'm John Izzy. Change can be difficult for a lot of us, but when we understand what makes us tick, we develop a better understanding of who we are and begin a journey of discovering our best self. Join me for a free session at johnizzy.com.
And I'm Kim Cordy, creator of the Emotion Chef Framework, an emotion management tool. Thoughts drive emotions, and emotions drive thoughts, but it's our emotions that drive our decisions and behaviors. Find out more at kimcordy.com.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Knowing each other personally and socially for the past 10 years, Kim and John have joined forces, bringing years of experience and training, providing a platform for growth and personal development, along with a little humor. John is the heart, Kim is the mind, and together they are HeartMind-ify. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Kim. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, John. I had to use another word. Andrew was teasing me that I'm always saying fantastic. My husband, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. And I hope you all had a great week and enjoyed our podcast with Nurse Gina. We had a lot of great feedback, so keep your comments coming. We really do appreciate them. So today, Kim is going to talk about our 3 brains and how we make decisions. It's such an interesting topic. Where did you get the idea to start from, Kim?
There's been a lot out, mostly for leadership around making decisions and using your head, your heart, and your gut. You can find books on it. There's a company an organization, I should say, in California that is solely dedicated to, it's called HeartMath. It's solely dedicated to the heart's influence on our body and decision making also. But in particular was this article, or I should say research article, and it was entitled Head, Heart, and Gut in Decision Making, Development of a Multiple Brain Preference Questionnaire. And Lord knows I love a questionnaire. So I had to read it. But the idea for people who aren't aware of this, we do have 2 extra brains besides the one in our head. Now, it's not the same as the one in your head, but they are a cluster of neurons, and they have everything that you need to have this communication going, not only within the neurons, but also to the head brain. The gut brain has about 100 million neurons, which is pretty big. It goes from your esophagus all the way down to your anus. Most of the communication, 80% of it's going directly to the brain from the gut, but there is some coming back from the brain to the gut. Then there is the heart brain. These are 40,000 specialized little neurons that sit in the upper right ventricle of the heart. You can look it up on Google if you want to know exactly where that's at, but that's where they all live. It's not like it covers the whole heart. It's just one little spot. And this has a 2-way communication with the brain also, and it's fairly active. And it's an interesting bit of physiology, right? Like to think that there's extras, quote unquote, brains in our body. But what this research was talking about, or this article, is how they developed this questionnaire to see which brain you prefer when making decisions. So just to start out, like anything is a whole body activity. Like it's super, super complex in the sense that, it's not just one thing like, oh, this gut makes the decision. The brain is the powerhouse. That's the main engine, but there's a definite influence that we get. And their article is pointing out that you need to make sure that you balance these three. So, what I thought I would do is share with you and our audience some of what they found as to what it means if your greater influence is the head brain, or what if your gut brain influences your decisions more, or what if your heart brain does. So let's get started. John, the one thing that they did
Uh-huh.
before anybody in their test group, they all said to them, "Hey, what do you think your predominant brain is, the greatest influencer of your decisions? Which brain? Which brain would you choose?"
Would I choose my heart for sure?
Yeah.
Although I think my gut would be right up there. For you, I think it would be your brain.
My head brain?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it turned out to be. But for 52% of the people who guessed at the beginning and then took the test, 52% found out that what they thought was their preference wasn't.
Now that's interesting.
So, isn't that interesting? And
Yeah.
I think that goes to show that we are not consciously aware, really, of what's influencing us. So, this whole exercise of taking this questionnaire really becomes a makes you more conscious, right?
Yeah.
Makes you more present in making these decisions. So before we go any further, I just wanted to say that. So if users will get access to this questionnaire, or listeners, if they want at the end, and I highly, if you take it, I highly suggest you guess first and then see what the results are, so you can see how spot on you are. Actually, I'm crazy head brain. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so let's talk about the first brain, and that's the gut brain. This is where you kind of identify yourself. If you think about it, it's really it's the deepest level of you. It's where you go for self-preservation. You know, you think like your gut reaction, if something's wrong, it comes from your gut. Your boundaries, your aversions, your fight or flight response. This is all coming from your gut. Also, the impulse for action, this gutsy courage, the will to act. So if you are not connected to it from a gut perspective, you might not have the will to finalize that decision or to take action on it, because that's what the guts uh, focus is. This is what its function is. If you are a heavy user of a gut response for decisions, you might be relating to these descriptions. You're reactive, impulsive, action oriented. So while that might be good in some situations, in others it might not be. One of the things that they talk about in many of these books that are out there, in fact, this comes from a book called Head, Heart, and Guts: How the World's Best Companies Develop Complete Leaders. I just want to say, for those of you who say, "Oh, I don't need to listen to this because I'm not a leader, I am not a CEO." Yes, you are. You are the CEO of your life. The decisions that you make impact your life. It impacts the lives of those around you, your family. So never think that just because it's geared towards leaders, that it's not geared towards you. You are a CEO in my world. So listen up and take advantage of this information.
I can't agree with you more. I can't agree with you more. That's awesome advice. Very good.
So you got leaders out there. You're the type who take risks without enough information. You balance risk with reward. You act with integrity despite difficulties. You're not afraid to make tough decisions. You pursue success even in the face of adversity.
So, Kim, does this relate to your intuition?
Absolutely. It
Okay.
does, because that's your gut instinct. Interestingly enough, and I want to bring in this another smart book called The Secret Life of the Mind: How Your Brain Thinks, Feels, and Decides. There's different kinds of decisions in different circumstances, right?
Yeah.
If you're choosing a toothpaste, like, you've got so many to choose from. It's not like it's complex or difficult. You're looking at all the toothpaste. You make a decision, and they find that the people who have fewer options and then make a decision, they are happier with the outcome. But when there's a complex matter and you're having to deal with a bunch of different options, and it's not just as easy as picking which toothpaste you want. They say to go with your, I'm going to call it your gut instinct. And the reason is, and I'm going to read directly from the book. They said, when we make a decision by carefully thinking over a small number of elements, we choose better if we take our time. Yet, when the problem is complex, in general, we make better choices by following our intuition than if we stew over it. And the reason is because our cognitive brain can only take in and handle so much information. And so our subconscious can handle a whole heck of a lot more. And that's where that gut intuition comes into play. I thought that that was really, really interesting.
No, that's interesting. And the thing that comes to mind is I have a member of my family, and everybody will laugh when they hear this on Saturday, but I have a member of my family that takes forever in a grocery store. I mean, we'll go through and we'll just say, just pick one. It doesn't matter. It's all meat. Just pick something. And we laugh about it and give him a hard time about it. But and eventually he just makes a decision and we move on. But it's funny because you can see where there is this excuse me, struggle of what's going on in the head brain, and finally it's just, oh, I'm just going to go with what I want, and he just grabs it and goes. It's like he's giving in to his gut reaction. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, this process is so complex. We are amazingly complex, and the more I learn about how we think and behave, and I mean, there's so much we don't know. It's crazy. But anyway, that was a good use of explaining intuition and decision making, John. So thanks for bringing that in.
You're welcome.
Next, we're going to talk about head brain. And
Okay.
this is not going to be a big surprise, right? This is where you think, and you have your perception, pattern recognition, your reasoning, analysis, and you're going to like this word, John, metacognition.
Could you say that again? I
Metacognition.
love that word.
Yeah. And you know what that is? Thinking about thinking. So for people like me who think a lot and think about their thinking, that is that is it. That's what we do.
Now
So
that makes perfect sense.
see, this is why, guys, I'm the mind in this and John's the heart. So this is also where we make meaning of things, and we know like grass is green, or how to use scissors. Languaging, narrative, like how to explain things using language is what that means, or metaphors. So this is happening all in your brain now. You can tell me, John, if you see me in this, because I read this. Of course, I didn't look at myself. I looked at my friend Liz and thought, oh, this is so Liz. And I told her this. She laughed. She agrees. So signs of an over head brain in overuse, over planning, focused on what could go wrong, too involved or trying to do it all, are often viewed as cold and impersonal.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. So
yeah, yeah.
some of that I can agree with.
Yeah, I don't think I'm cold and
No, I
impersonal,
don't
but
think
I
you are
can
either.
be.
Oh,
I
well,
think people think I can be.
really? I don't know. I don't get that impression. But no, I can see where those overuse signs are prominent in some people that are really big head thinkers. So yeah, so that makes sense to me.
Okay, now for you CEOs out there of your lives, in leadership, you rethink strategies and frameworks, you reframe boundaries. You're a global thinker without losing sight of short term goals. So you can see the big picture and the short picture. You are open to ideas from within or without your personal life or your organization. It doesn't matter. And you are good at developing a point of view. So that is your head brain. Next, last but not least, and probably for a lot of people, including my friend John here,
Yes.
our heart brain. So the heart brain prime functions are emoting, which is your emotional processing, like your grief, your anger, hatred, joy, happiness, all of those emotions. Those are, and people, and this is not like a shocker. I mean, when emotions happen, you feel it in your heart. And now you know where you're feeling it, that little right ventricle, upper right ventricle. And then it's where your values are, what's important to you, your priorities. So when making a decision, not the gut saying, "Am I going to take action?" The heart is, or the head's like, "Does this make sense?" Like analyzes it. The heart brain is like, "How do I feel about this decision? How does it affect my priorities, what's important to me, but also your relational affect, your felt connection with other people, how will it impact them, like your heart brain, it has those feelings of love or hate or indifference towards others, compassion or uncaring, like or dislike. So that's where the heart comes into play. So what's coming next, John? Signs of overuse.
Oh, here we go.
All right, get ready, strap in. Concern about self-image, impact on others or the lives of others. You're so concerned about what people think of you, or how you're impacting other people. Not necessarily that gut where it's self-preservation and taking care of yourself. You're worried about others and what others think of you. Potential to be a dreamer or to hope too much. So the people who are thinking with their heart, they're not necessarily stuck in reason. They're kind of dreamy, and then they also have a potential to show emotions too obviously and just too easily. You know those people. They have a term for it. That he wears his heart on his sleeve, or she wears her heart on her sleeve. So those are signs of overuse.
So Kim, I want to jump in here because I think we're laughing and we're joking and we're giving some really good information, but I do want to say though, as we go through the overuse sections of both the heart and the mind and the gut, those are the overuse in most people is not something that happens all the time. If you're wearing your feelings on your sleeves all the time, then there's something going on that needs to be worked through, right? It's like it's you hear people say get out of your head, get out of your feelings. And that's because you're in them so much, right? So there is no coherence between the three brains. It seems like those people need to really, work on listening to other parts of their body. Um,
Yeah. So I want to come
does
back
that
to
make
that.
sense or
It does.
yeah,
It really does. But it would be great. I just have a little bit left on the heart brain leadership,
perfect.
and then I would love to continue that, because I do want to talk about like balancing them,
Okay.
and then I'd like to get your input on how you use it in coaching.
Okay, perfect.
So let's just finish up with this heart brain leadership piece. So a heart brain, you CEOs out there, you balance people in needs and business needs. So, and think about your life's business and your the people in your life. So you balance both of those. It builds trust. It develops compassion. That you are a person who develops that.
Mhm.
You promote a culture where people can be wholeheartedly committed to it. I talk about emotion culture all the time. That's people think of culture as just relating to an organization or to a country or a group of people, but we have our own personal culture. And so you develop friendships more when you have a strong personal culture, because you have all of these qualities of being able to build trust and balance yourself with other people, and that's attractive. So when I'm talking about promoting culture, it's not just the culture within an organization or a, a religion or whatever. It's also your personal culture, and it's knowing a heart brain leader knows what's important, and they understand and know how to overcome potential roadblocks. So those are kind of the qualities that you would see in a heart brain leader.
Right.
Now, to your point, and to the point of the study, is that if you take this questionnaire and you're able to see, oh, I'm really heavy in one. So the way that the questionnaire works is that you get a percentage for each category. It's not um, a percentage of the total. It's a percentage of each category. So if you get 100% or on one and 60 on another and 20 on another, well, that's going to tell you that you are a little too much in one. And the idea is that when you're aware of this, then you need to try and incorporate more of those brains in your decision making. And this is where I wanted to talk to you in in your coaching experience. Like, what how do you use this? Like, what have you seen?
So I have two things I want to tell you. The first is questions that I always follow up with when I'm talking to a client. So I always ask these three questions when we're going through an issue. I always say, what does your gut tell you? How does your heart feel? And what does your head say? And the reason why I do that is because I want their whole body to kind of get into the coaching experience. I don't want them to just speak from their heart or tell me what their gut is trying to say or that they've thought through something. I want them to actually go through a series of those three questions so that we can begin to see a pattern if they are more heart focused or if they're more headstrong or if they live by intuition and live by their gut. So I always go through those three questions. I think it helps clarify to them where their strong points are and where they need to have a little bit more coherence between the three brains. So those are the questions that I ask. The other thing I wanted to tell you was, a lot of what you said, and I agree with you on most of all of it. I mean, I think it's right. It's right in your wheelhouse, and it's what I think coaching is leaning towards. So, an example of this in a real life situation. A client said to me that his job is tough because he's always up on a deadline and no one appreciates the work that is involved to finish a task on time, especially when there are multiple expectations put on him daily to perform well. And so that's a pretty common, if you're in a leadership role at work, that's a pretty common issue that I find in a lot of people in leadership roles. So what I reflected back to him was something that's similar to this. What I hear you saying is that you are exhausted, right? So that's the heart brain at the challenge of your assignments. Well, that's the head brain. And yet I sense that there is more going on here, your gut brain. So, by reflecting back in this manner, my client was able to filter through the three brains to have a more holistic understanding of what is truly going on. Instead of responding from one brain, all brains are involved. My point here is that the best answer you can come up with is the one that comes from a better understanding of who you are as a person. And that understanding comes from your mind, your heart, and your gut. And that's what I try to work with when I work with my clients.
Yeah, that's super good. You're like we're on the same page here because some of the reading that I've done on this, it says you should, check in with your gut first, then go to your heart, and then kind of have this circle kind of make the rounds. And once you have a feeling about it, it doesn't change too much. Thoughts can change your feelings, but you if you kind of go through your feeling might change as you think more about it, but kind of doing the loop is what I say, check in throughout, like, how do I feel, like you were just saying, but it's always going to end up basically in your head. Like the other two are an influence, because like I said before, this is a we're a complex adaptive system, like our human body, and it's an integrated decisions that get made. It's just we want to make sure we're integrating all of them, because there's pros and cons. Everything has a yin and a yang, and there's pros and cons to each methodology. So when you actually, in the article, they said that research has shown that people can be trained to shift their decision strategies and overcome any implicit preferences and biases. It just takes this combination of learning, awareness, and support that you get from incorporating all these brains. So it's important that you put all of them and you try and balance them. And if you know what your underlying preference is, then you can try and compensate for it, because we all have one. And this would make for better balanced decisions. Now, we're not talking about doing this when you go out to buy toothpaste. This isn't when you say, "Oh, how does my heart feel? What does my gut say?"
Exactly.
These are, yeah. So this is, your kids are asking to do something and you're like, "Wow!" Like your initial response is, "No." Stop, do the rounds, and then give a response, or what, a big life change. We're not talking about doing this for any little moment, but if you get in that habit, it's going to become more natural, because what happens, neurons that wire together fire together. But we still are going to have a bias for one brain or another, which we all know what yours is, and we all know what mine is. So, taking that moment to stop and just do the rounds, you're going to make a better decision.
So it's funny.
I should say a more balanced decision.
No, that's good. It's funny because as you're saying that, what's coming to mind is I'm co-authoring a guidebook for male social wisdom. And the first step to social wisdom for a male is what we're throwing out there is to take a pause, right? And that's exactly what you're telling the listeners today. Take a pause, stop, take a deep breath, and just think about, what's going on? What's the situation, that's presented to you? What's the best way to approach it? And really think things through. Because when you begin to do that, you realize that you continue to do that over little decisions, right? So if you get into the practice of doing something and you're consistently going at it, then that's going to become second nature to you. And you're going to begin to feel and begin to think and to begin to use your intuition in ways that you have never used before. And it's going to make you a happier person and a more in tune person with yourself, and then in tune with the people that you're communicating with.
Right. And going back to being present, mindfulness is getting more and more attention. We talk about this all the time, right?
Yeah.
Mindfulness, it keeps you from being too much in the past or trying to project into the future. And a lot of the times, our decisions are made based on our past. And I do this all the time. I'm as guilty of it as anyone else, because I mean, this is just how we're built. And in little things, like I would say, "Oh, I don't want to eat that." And my husband goes, "Well, you haven't eaten this for a long time." He's like, "You might like it now." And I'm like, "Oh, stop being smart." And 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 it's true. It's like, "Oh yeah, I had that once and I didn't like it, so you're never going to try it again." So it may sound silly, but if it, it's not like we can practice all this. It's not life changing to me if I don't eat something. It might be good for me, because if it tastes really good, I might gain even more weight. But but
Touche.
the point, yeah, but the point is that we are living in our past most of the time. It's fast.
Mhm.
It affects our emotions. It affects our thoughts. It affects our decisions. And I'm going to go back to my motto that is core to the emotion chef, which is emotions, thoughts drive emotions and emotions drive thoughts, but it's our emotions that drive our decisions and behaviors.
Yes.
So I don't care how cognitive you think you are. I have thought this thing through, all this blah blah blah, and the decision is made, and you make the decision that you feel is the right one. And in the end, it's the feelings and how you feel about it. So this is why it's so important to make sure that you have a good understanding and a good emotional intelligence.
Wow, Kim, this has been a really fascinating show today, and I think we've given the listeners a lot to think about today. I think it's been really good. So thank you so much for bringing up this topic and really kind of diving deep into it a little bit, you know?
Thanks for saying that, John. I live for this stuff. I am a latent geek. I love it, love it, love it. And I'm excited to hear what we're talking about next week. Please share. It's your
Ah.
turn, John.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Here we go.
So next week's going to be an interesting show. You know, too many of us allow other people to determine our self-worth. So what we're going to talk about is a secret I have. What other people don't see in you doesn't decrease your value. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about that. So, Kim, look, it's been great. It's been a great show. And thank you so much for your thoughts today. Remember, everyone, if you are interested in taking the multiple brain questionnaire to discover your decision making preferences, go to emotionchef.com. Kim, have a great week and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, John. And you do the same. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody. All righty. Bye bye.
Bye.
New shows are available every Saturday right here on heartmindify.podbean.com or wherever you listen. Kim and I would like to thank each and every one of you for allowing us to be a small part of your life. Be kind to yourself and remember, our hearts tell the story, but our mind is the conductor.